Before we start, I need to know, where are you right now? Are you at home, maybe folding laundry or cooking dinner? On your commute? Taking a break from work? Drop a comment and let me know because this story is about the places where we're supposed to feel safe and what happens when those places become the most dangerous spots in our world. It was a Tuesday afternoon in September 2024 when my 7-year-old daughter came home from school and changed my life forever. Not because of anything she said, not at first, but because of what she did. I'm Lauren, and back then I was 32 years old, working as a teacher's aide at Sophie's elementary school, married to Ryan for 9 years, living in a 3-bedroom house in suburban Ohio with a mortgage and a minivan, and everything that's supposed to add up to the American dream. From the outside, we probably looked perfect. Ryan had a good job as a construction foreman. I worked at the school so I could have the same schedule as Sophie. We had a nice house, went to church on Sundays, attended Sophie's soccer games on Saturdays. But here's what nobody tells you about perfect looking lives. Sometimes they're just really good at hiding the cracks. That Tuesday, Sophie came bursting through the front door the way she always did, backpack bouncing, ponytail swinging, already talking before she'd even taken off her shoes. Mommy, we did the new drill today. Miss Grace said we did really good and nobody talked, and I was the quietest one in the whole class. I was stirring pasta sauce at the stove, and I turned to smile at her, expecting to hear about a fire drill or maybe a tornado drill. We lived in Ohio, we had those sometimes. That's wonderful, sweetie. What kind of drill was it? Sophie dropped her backpack by the door. I'd have to remind her later to hang it up properly, and came skipping into the kitchen. Her face was bright with pride, the way kids get when they've done something well and want you to be proud of them too. The bad person drill, she said matter-of-factly, reaching for the apple slices I'd already cut up for her snack. You know, if a bad person comes to school with a gun or something, we have to turn off all the lights and hide under our desks and be totally quiet, like not even breathing loud. My hand froze mid-stir. The wooden spoon hovered above the pot, sauce dripping back down, and I felt something cold grip my chest. Uh, a lockdown drill? I managed to say, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Yeah, that's what Miss Grace called it. She said we might have to do it for real someday, so we need to practice being really quiet and really still. She said if we hear loud noises, we stay hidden and don't make any sounds because the bad person might hear us. Sophie demonstrated, putting her finger to her lips in an exaggerated shushing gesture, her eyes wide and serious. Then she grinned, proud of herself. I didn't make even one sound for the whole 10 minutes. Timmy sneezed, and Miss Grace said that could have been bad if it was real. I forced myself to smile, to nod, to say all the right things about how proud I was of her for following directions, but inside something was crumbling. Because as I watched my 7-year-old daughter demonstrate how to hide from an active shooter, I realized something that would haunt me for weeks to come. I'd been doing the exact same thing. Not at school, at home. For the past 3 years, ever since Ryan's drinking had gotten worse, ever since his anger had started spilling over from words into thrown objects, into grabbed arms, into worse, I'd been teaching myself the same skills Sophie had learned today: how to be quiet, how to stay still, how to read the warning signs, how to hide. When Ryan's truck pulled into the driveway at night, I'd listened to how he slammed the door. One slam meant he had a bad day, but might be okay. 2 slams meant trouble. 3 meant danger. I'd learned to read his footsteps on the front porch, the weight and rhythm of them telling me what kind of night we were in for. I'd learned to make myself small, to speak softly, to never contradict him when he'd been drinking angry. I'd learned which floorboards creaked and how to avoid them when I needed to move around the house after he'd gone to bed angry. I'd learned to sleep lightly, always listening, always alert. I'd learned lockdown drills too, not at school. Mommy, are you okay? Sophie's voice pulled me back. I looked down at her concerned face, her head tilted to one side the way she did when she was trying to figure something out. Yes, baby, I'm fine. I'm so proud of you for being so brave today. Miss Grace said it's important to practice. She said bad things can happen anywhere, but if we know what to do, we can be safe. She said the most important thing is to stay quiet and listen for the adults to tell us it's okay to come out. Stay quiet, listen for adults, wait to be told it's safe. I'd been doing that for 3 years. And in that moment, standing in my kitchen with my beautiful daughter explaining her school lockdown drill, I realized something that would haunt me for weeks to come. I was teaching my child the same survival skills I'd learned living with her father. Not through words, through example. And that terrified me more than anything Ryan had ever done. The thing about domestic violence, and yes, that's what it was, though I didn't let myself use those words yet, is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's not like the movies where a man hits a woman on the first date and she either leaves or stays. It's so much more subtle than that, so much more insidious. Ryan and I met when I was 23, fresh out of college with my education degree, working my first real job at an elementary school. He was 26, charming, hardworking, the kind of guy who opened doors and called his mother every Sunday. He made me laugh. He made me feel safe. For the first few years, everything was good. Great, even. We got married, bought the house, talked about starting a family. Ryan worked hard, sometimes too hard, but I thought that was just him being ambitious, wanting to provide for us. Sophie was born when I was 25, and for a while, Ryan was the perfect father. He'd come home from work and scoop her up, making her giggle, telling her stories, being gentle and sweet. I'd watch them together and think, this is it. This is the life I wanted. But something shifted when Sophie turned 4 and Ryan's company downsized. He didn't lose his job, but he got passed over for a promotion he'd been counting on. He started drinking more. Just a couple beers after work, he said, to relax. Those couple beers became 4, then 6, then whiskey instead of beer. The first time he threw something, it was a TV remote. Not at me, just threw it across the room in frustration over a football game. The remote shattered against the wall and he immediately apologized, said he didn't know what came over him, promised it wouldn't happen again. It did happen again, and again. Remotes, phones, once a plate, always followed by apologies. Always, I'm so sorry, baby, I don't know what's wrong with me. Work is just so stressful, I'll do better. I believed him. Or maybe I just wanted to believe him. The first time he grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises, Sophie was 5. She was already asleep and Ryan and I were arguing about money. I'd bought Sophie new shoes without checking with him first. Her old ones had holes in them and she needed them for school. But Ryan was furious, said I was spending too much, said I didn't respect him. When I tried to walk away from the argument, he grabbed my arm and pulled me back. Don't walk away from me when I'm talking to you, he said, his voice low and dangerous in a way I'd never heard before. I still have a scar from where his wedding ring cut into my skin. He apologized the next morning, bought me flowers, took me to dinner, told me he loved me more than anything and he'd never do it again. I wanted to believe him. Now, 3 years later, the grabbed arms had escalated to shoved shoulders, to being pushed against walls, to hands around my throat that squeezed just hard enough to scare me, but never quite hard enough to leave marks where anyone could see them. But here's the thing about escalation. It's gradual. Each incident is just a little worse than the last, but not so much worse that you can point to it and say, this is the moment everything changed. You adjust, you adapt, you learn to survive. I learned to read his moods, learned to navigate his anger, learned to keep Sophie out of the way when he was drinking, learned to make excuses, to my sister, to my coworkers, to myself. The bruises on my arms were from being clumsy. The locked bedroom door at night was because I was a light sleeper. The way I flinched at loud noises was just anxiety. The reason I started sleeping in Sophie's room with her sometimes was because she had nightmares. Lies. All of it. Lies. I told myself and everyone else because the truth was too terrifying to face. The truth was that I was afraid of my husband. The truth was that my daughter was growing up in a house where mommy walked on eggshells and daddy's moods controlled everything. The truth was that I'd become an expert at survival, at reading warning signs, at making myself invisible, just like Sophie was learning to do at school. That night after dinner, which Ryan skipped because he was working late, which I knew meant drinking with his coworkers at the bar, I helped Sophie get ready for bed. We read her favorite book together and she snuggled against me, warm and safe and smelling like strawberry shampoo. "Mommy," she said sleepily, "do you ever do lockdown drills at work?" "We do, sweetheart. All schools have them now." "Do you get scared?" I thought about lying, but something in her question made me pause, something in the way she asked it, like she was really asking about something else. "Sometimes," I admitted. "But you know what? Being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. Brave means doing what you need to do even when you're scared." She thought about this for a moment. Then, "Are you brave, Mommy?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Was I brave? I was hiding from my own husband, teaching my daughter, without meaning to, that this was normal, that fear was normal, that walking on eggshells and reading moods and staying quiet were just part of life. "I'm trying to be," I whispered, and I realized, maybe for the first time, that trying wasn't going to be enough anymore. The weeks after Sophie's lockdown drill, I started noticing things I'd been too close to see before. Or maybe I'd been seeing them all along, but refusing to let myself acknowledge what I was looking at. Sophie had started locking her bedroom door at night. When I asked her why, she said it made her feel safer. She was 7 years old and needed to feel safer in her own home. I told myself it was because of the lockdown drills, because school had made her aware of dangers she'd never thought about before. But deep down, I knew better. I caught her flinching when Ryan raised his voice at the TV during football games. I saw the way she'd go quiet and still when his truck pulled into the driveway, the same way I did, both of us unconsciously holding our breath, waiting to see what mood he'd be in. One Saturday morning, I walked past her room and heard her playing with her dolls. I wouldn't have stopped except for what I heard her saying. "You have to be quiet now," she was telling one doll in a whisper. "Daddy's sleeping and we can't wake him up because he had too many grown-up drinks last night. If we're very, very quiet, maybe today will be a good day." I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand on the doorframe, listening to my daughter narrate the life I thought I was hiding from her. She knew. Of course she knew. Children always know. I'd been so focused on protecting her from seeing the worst of it, the arguments, the thrown objects, the nights when Ryan's anger turned physical, that I hadn't realized she was still absorbing everything, the tension, the fear, the walking on eggshells. She was learning patterns I'd never wanted to teach her. That afternoon, while Ryan was at the hardware store, my sister Nina called. She lived 2 hours away in Columbus, worked as a nurse, and had always been the strong one in our family. She'd never particularly liked Ryan, though she'd never said so outright. Just little comments here and there. "He seems tense. Does he always drink that much? You look tired, Lauren." "Hey, stranger," she said when I answered. "Haven't heard from you in a while. You okay?" The question was innocent enough, casual even, but something in her tone told me she was really asking, really looking for an answer. "I'm fine," I said automatically, Just busy with work and Sophie and everything. Mm-hmm. A pause. How's Ryan? He's good. Working a lot. Still drinking? My chest tightened. Nina? I'm just asking, Lauren. Last time I was there, he went through a 12-pack in one afternoon. That's not a couple beers. That's a problem. He's under a lot of stress at work, I heard myself say, and even as the words came out, I hated myself for making excuses for him. Nina was quiet for a long moment. Then, Lauren, I need you to hear something and I need you to really listen. You sound like Mom did. The comparison hit me like ice water. Our mother had been married to our father for 23 years before she finally left him. 23 years of excuses and explanations, and he's just stressed, and it's not that bad, and he really loves us, he just doesn't know how to show it. 23 years of walking on eggshells and teaching her daughters to do the same. Nina and I had sworn we'd never end up like her. And yet, here I was. It's not the same, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? When's the last time you came to visit me? When's the last time you went anywhere without checking with Ryan first? When's the last time you made a decision about anything without worrying about his reaction? I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out, because she was right about all of it. I'm worried about you, Nina, continued her voice, gentler now, and I'm worried about Sophie. That's not a healthy environment for a little girl to grow up in, and you know it. You know it, Lauren. I have to go, I said abruptly. I hear Ryan's truck. Lauren, I'll call you later. I hung up before she could say anything else, before she could voice the truths I wasn't ready to face. But that conversation planted something in my mind, a seed of awareness that I couldn't quite shake. That night, after Sophie was asleep and Ryan was passed out from in front of the TV, I did something I'd never done before. I Googled signs of domestic violence. What I found felt like I was reading my own diary. Does your partner control how you spend money, your time, who you see? Make you feel afraid of their temper? Threaten to hurt you or themselves if you leave? Grab, push, shove, or hit you? Make you feel like you're walking on eggshells? Check, 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 check. I read through website after website, each one describing my life with eerie accuracy. Statistics about escalation, about how psychological abuse always precedes physical abuse, about how women in situations like mine were in the most danger when they tried to leave. I stayed up until 3 in the morning, reading story after story from women who'd survived what I was living through. And I realized something that should have been obvious all along. I wasn't going to survive this by staying quiet. I wasn't going to protect Sophie by teaching her to hide. The danger wasn't out there in some hypothetical school shooter. The danger was here, in my house, in my marriage, and I was the only one who could stop it. It happened on a Friday night in October. Ryan had been at his company's quarterly meeting, which always meant drinking. They'd rented out a local restaurant, had an open bar, and Ryan had apparently taken full advantage. I knew as soon as I heard his truck pull into the driveway, the way he revved the engine, the way he slammed the door not once but 3 times, the heavy, uneven footsteps on the front walk. 3 slams. Danger. Sophie was already asleep upstairs, thank God. I'd made sure to feed her early, get her bathed and in bed before Ryan got home, knowing this was likely to be a bad night. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to read a book, my body tense, every nerve on alert. I learned to look casual while being completely ready to react. Another survival skill. Ryan stumbled through the front door, his tie loosened, his face flushed. He was past drunk and into that dangerous territory where I couldn't predict what would set him off. "Hey, baby," I said carefully, keeping my voice light and neutral. How was the meeting? Terrible, he slurred, throwing his keys on the counter with more force than necessary. They skittered across the surface and fell to the floor with a loud clatter that made me flinch. Thompson got the promotion. Thompson, that incompetent idiot who's been there half as long as me. I'm sorry, I said, because that's what you say. That's what keeps things calm. Never argue, never contradict, just sympathize. You're sorry, he repeated, his voice dripping with sarcasm. That's helpful. That's really helpful, Lauren. I could feel the night turning, could sense the shift in his mood like a change in air pressure before a storm. I should have just stayed quiet, should have just let him rant himself out, but I was tired, so tired of walking on eggshells, tired of being afraid in my own home. Maybe you should get some water, I suggested gently. Get some sleep. Things will look better in the morning. Wrong thing to say. His eyes narrowed. Don't tell me what to do. Don't you dare tell me what to do in my own house that I pay for. Ryan, I wasn't. You weren't what? He took a step toward me, and I stood up from the couch, my book falling to the floor. You weren't trying to tell me what to do? You weren't judging me, just like everyone else judges me? I'm not judging you. I'm your wife. I'm on your side. Are you? Another step closer. Because from where I'm standing, you're just like everyone else, looking down on me, thinking you're better than me, you and your perfect little job at the perfect little school with your perfect little life. My heart was pounding now. I could smell the alcohol on him, could see the rage building behind his eyes. I'd seen this before, but tonight felt different. Tonight felt worse. Ryan, please, you're drunk. Let's just... I'm not drunk, he shouted, loud enough that I worried it would wake Sophie. I had a few drinks. That's what people do. That's what normal people do. He was moving closer, backing me up against the wall. I tried to slide to the side to get some space between us, but he blocked me with his arm, trapping me. Ryan, you're scaring me, I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded, how weak. Good, he said, his face inches from mine. Maybe you should be scared. Maybe then you'd show me some respect. That's when I heard it. A small sound from upstairs. A door opening. Sophie's voice, sleepy and frightened. Mommy? Everything happened very fast after that. Ryan turned toward the stairs, his expression shifting into something I'd never seen before, something that made my blood freeze. Go back to bed, Sophie, he called out, but his voice was hard, angry. This doesn't concern you. I heard yelling, Sophie said, and I could hear her starting to cry. I'm scared. Something in me snapped. Maybe it was hearing my daughter's frightened voice. Maybe it was seeing Ryan turn that anger toward her, even indirectly. Maybe it was 3 years of fear finally reaching a breaking point. Maybe it was remembering what I told Sophie about being brave. But in that moment, everything became crystal clear. This ended tonight. Sophie, baby, go back to your room, I called up, my voice stronger than I felt. Lock your door. Everything's okay. It's not okay, Ryan snarled, turning back to me. Nothing's okay. You've turned my own daughter against me. You've poisoned her. I haven't done anything, I said, and I was surprised how calm I sounded. You did this, Ryan. All of this. Your drinking, your anger, your violence. This is all you. His hand shot out and grabbed my throat. Not squeezing, not yet, just holding, a threat, a promise of what he could do if he wanted to. We stood there like that, frozen, his hands on my throat, his eyes boring into mine. I could hear Sophie crying upstairs. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. And I thought, this is it. This is the moment. This is where I either fight back or I don't. where I teach my daughter to hide from danger or I teach her to stand up to it. I brought my knee up hard. Ryan staggered backward, releasing his grip on my throat, doubling over with a string of curses. I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. I ran for the stairs, taking them two at a time, my only thought getting to Sophie. "Mommy!" she cried as I reached her door. She'd locked it like I'd told her to, and my hand shook so badly I could barely turn the knob once she unlocked it from inside. I scooped her up, her little arms wrapping tight around my neck, her tears soaking into my shoulder. She was trembling, terrified, and I felt a surge of rage toward Ryan that was stronger than any fear I'd ever felt. This was my daughter, my baby, and I had let her live in fear for too long. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered, carrying her into her room and locking the door behind us. "Everything's going to be okay." From downstairs, I could hear Ryan shouting, furniture scraping, something crashing. My phone was in my pocket. I'd started keeping it on me at all times, one more survival instinct I'd developed. With Sophie still clinging to me, I pulled it out with shaking hands. I called 911. "911, what's your emergency?" The operator's voice was calm, professional. I tried to match it, tried to keep my voice steady for Sophie's sake. "I need police at my house. My husband is drunk and violent. He grabbed my throat. My daughter and I are locked in a bedroom." "Are you safe right now, ma'am?" "For the moment, but he's very angry. I don't know what he'll do." "I'm sending officers to your location now. Stay on the line with me. What's your address?" I gave her the address, my voice surprisingly calm despite the pounding of my heart. Downstairs, Ryan was still shouting, his words slurred and incoherent. I heard another crash. The lamp in the living room, I thought. Or maybe the coffee table. Sophie whimpered against my shoulder. "Is Daddy going to hurt us?" The question broke my heart, because it meant she'd been wondering the same thing I had. How long had she been afraid? How many nights had she lain awake in this room, listening to the sounds downstairs, wondering if the violence that filled the air like smoke would eventually reach her? "No, baby," I said firmly. "I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. Ever. The police are coming, and they're going to help us." "Help us with what?" How do you explain domestic violence to a 7-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that her father, the man who should protect her, has become the danger? "Sometimes grown-ups have problems," I said carefully, sitting down on her bed with her still in my lap. "And sometimes those problems get so big that we need help to solve them. That's what the police are for, to help people who are in trouble." "Are we in trouble?" "No, sweetheart, we're not in trouble, but we need help, and it's okay to ask for help. That's something I should have done a long time ago." The operator stayed on the line with me, asking questions, keeping me calm. How long had I been married? How long had the violence been going on? Were there weapons in the house? Did Ryan have access to guns? "No guns," I told her, "just his fists and his anger and 3 years of escalating violence that I'd been too afraid to report." "Officers are 3 minutes away," the operator said. "I need you to stay in that room with the door locked until they arrive. Don't open it for anyone but the police." Ryan was at the door now, pounding on it, trying the handle. "Lauren, open this door. We need to talk about this." "Don't open it," the instructor instructed. Not necessarily. I had no intention of opening that door. "Lauren, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. Just let me in so we can talk about this like adults." Sophie was crying harder now, her little body shaking. I held her tighter, stroking her hair, whispering that everything would be okay, even though I wasn't sure I believed it. "You called the cops?" Ryan's voice changed, became harder. You actually called the cops on me? On your husband? What the hell is wrong with you? The pounding got louder, harder. The door was solid, but I didn't know how long it would hold if he really wanted to break it down. Officers are 1 minute away, the operator said. Just hold on. That was the longest minute of my life. Ryan was screaming now, incoherent with rage, pounding on the door so hard I thought it might splinter. Sophie had her hands over her ears, her face buried in my chest. I rocked her gently, humming a song we'd sung together since she was a baby, trying to be the calm in her storm, even though I was terrified. Then finally, I heard it. Sirens, getting closer. Police! Open up! The pounding on Sophie's door stopped. I heard Ryan's footsteps moving away, heard him stumbling down the stairs, heard the front door open. Officers are in the house, the operator said. You can open the door now. They're coming up to get you. I stood, still holding Sophie, still not quite believing this was real, that I'd actually called the police, that I'd actually taken the first step toward ending this nightmare. A female officer appeared at the door, her expression kind but professional. Mrs. Collins, I'm Officer Torres. You and your daughter are safe now. Let's get you out of here. They took Ryan away in handcuffs. I watched from Sophie's window as they led him to the patrol car, his head down, his movements sluggish from the alcohol. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked pathetic, broken, like the man I'd fallen in love with a decade ago, not the monster he'd become. Part of me wanted to run after him, to say this was all a misunderstanding, that we could work it out. That's how strong the conditioning was, even after everything, even with my throat still tender from where he'd grabbed it. Part of me wanted to protect him. But I looked down at Sophie, who was finally calm, curled up in my lap with her thumb in her mouth, something she hadn't done since she was 4, and I knew I'd made the right choice. Officer Torres stayed with us while her partner dealt with Ryan. She sat down on Sophie's bed, her demeanor gentle. I need to ask you some questions, she said. I know this is hard, but it's important. I told her everything. The drinking, the escalation, the 3 years of walking on eggshells. I showed her the bruises on my arms, the ones I'd covered with long sleeves even in the summer heat. I told her about the thrown objects, the grabbed arms, the hand around my throat tonight. She took notes, took pictures of my bruises, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes showing something that might have been anger or sadness, or both. You did the right thing calling us, she said when I was done. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did. This kind of behavior only escalates. It doesn't get better on its own. What happens now? I asked. He'll be held overnight at minimum, probably arraigned on Monday. The DA will likely file charges for assault and domestic violence. You'll need to decide if you want to press charges, but given what you've told me and the evidence of injury, the state may proceed even if you don't. Will he come back here? We're going to request a protection order. That means he won't be legally allowed to come to the house or contact you or Sophie. If he does, he'll be arrested immediately. He'll be so angry, I whispered. Officer Torres leaned forward, her voice firm. Mrs. Collins, his anger is not your responsibility. His behavior is not your fault. You didn't make him drink. You didn't make him violent. Those are his choices, and he has to face the consequences of those choices. Somewhere in my mind, I knew she was right. But years of conditioning don't disappear in one night. Years of believing I could fix things, that I could manage his moods, that I could keep everyone safe if I just tried hard enough. Those beliefs were still there, whispering their lies. What about Sophie? I asked, looking down at my daughter who'd finally fallen asleep against me, exhausted from fear and tears. Does she have somewhere else she can stay tonight? Somewhere she'll feel safe? My sister lives in Columbus, Nina. She's always said we could come there if we needed to. I'd recommend calling her. Tonight was traumatic for your daughter. She needs to be somewhere that feels safe and stable while you figure out the next steps. Officer Torres gave me resources, phone numbers for domestic violence counselors, shelters, legal aid organizations. She explained about protection orders, about safety planning, about all the things I should have known about years ago but had been too afraid to look into. After she left, after they'd taken pictures of the damage downstairs, after they'd filed reports and done all the official things that police do, I sat alone in Sophie's room with my sleeping daughter and called my sister. Nina answered on the second ring. "Lauren, it's almost midnight. What's wrong?" "I need help," I said, and my voice broke on the words. "Nina, I need help. Can Sophie and I come stay with you?" "What happened? Are you okay? Is Sophie okay?" "We're okay. But Ryan, the police just took him away. He grabbed my throat. I called 911, and I can't stay here. I can't be in this house right now." There was a pause. Then, "Pack a bag. Both of you. Pack enough for a week. I'll be there in 90 minutes. Nina, don't argue with me. Just pack. I'm already grabbing my keys." She was there in 85 minutes. I'd spent that time moving through the house like a ghost, packing clothes for Sophie and me, gathering important documents, moving in a kind of mechanical daze. The living room was trashed. The lamp was broken, the coffee table overturned. There was a hole in the wall where Ryan had punched it. Evidence of his rage, evidence of what I'd been living with. Nina took one look at the destruction and pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "I'm so sorry you went through this," she whispered. "I'm so sorry you went through this. But you're safe now. You're both safe now." We loaded our bags into her car. Sophie woke up just enough to be transferred to the back seat, where she immediately fell back asleep, buckled into the booster seat Nina always kept in her car for visits. As we pulled away from the house that was supposed to be our home, our safe place, I looked back one last time. Every light was on, making it look warm and welcoming from the outside. But I knew the truth now. I'd known it for a long time, really. Home isn't safe just because it's familiar. And sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we let in ourselves. Nina's apartment was small but warm. She'd prepared the guest room before we arrived. Fresh sheets on the bed, nightlight plugged in, even a stuffed animal on the pillow for Sophie. "I keep it ready," she said simply, "just in case." "You knew?" I asked. "All this time you knew?" "I suspected. The way you'd make excuses to not visit. How you always had to check with Ryan before making any plans. The way you'd flinch at loud noises. The long sleeves in summer." She paused. "I'm a nurse, Lauren. I see the signs. But I couldn't make you see them. You had to get there yourself." We put Sophie to bed, and then Nina and I sat in her kitchen with tea, and I told her everything. Not just about tonight, but about all of it. 3 years of secrets spilled out in a rush. Every incident, every escalation, every time I'd made excuses or convinced myself it wasn't that bad, or believed it would get better. "Why didn't you tell me?" Nina asked, and there was hurt in her voice alongside the concern. "Because saying it out loud would have made it real," I said. "As long as I kept it to myself, I could pretend it was manageable, that I was handling it, that I was protecting Sophie by staying." "But you weren't protecting her. You know that now, right?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I saw it today, when she came home talking about her lockdown drill. The way she demonstrated staying quiet, hiding, making herself invisible. She's 7 years old, Nina, 7, and she already knows how to survive in a dangerous environment because I taught her, not with words, but with my actions, with my fear." "You're teaching her something different now," Nina said firmly. "You're teaching her that when someone hurts you, you don't stay. You don't make excuses. you leave, you ask for help. That's what she'll remember, not the fear, the courage. I wanted to believe her, but courage wasn't what I felt. What I felt was terrified, lost, like I'd just blown up my entire life and had no idea what came next. The next morning, I woke to find Sophie standing by my bed, her face anxious. "Where's Daddy?" "He's not here, sweetheart, remember? We're staying with Aunt Nina for a while." "Is he in jail?" The question was so direct, so adult, that it startled me, but I'd learned my lesson about hiding the truth from her. She'd seen too much. She deserved honesty. "Yes, baby, he is, because what he did last night was wrong. Grown-ups aren't allowed to hurt people even when they're angry." "Is it my fault? Because I was loud? Because I didn't stay in my room like I was supposed to?" My heart shattered. "Sophie, no. No, baby, this is not your fault. None of this is your fault. What Daddy did was his choice. You didn't cause it. I didn't cause it. He chose to drink too much. He chose to be angry. He chose to hurt people. Those were all his choices." "But I heard you fighting about money, about the shoes you bought me." She'd been listening. Of course she'd been listening. Children always are. "Sometimes grown-ups fight about money or other things," I said carefully. "That's normal. What's not normal is when fighting turns into hurting. That's when it becomes wrong. That's when someone has to ask for help." "Like you did, by calling the police." "Exactly like that." She climbed into bed with me, curling up against my side. "Are we going to go home?" "Eventually, when it's safe. Right now, we're going to stay here with Aunt Nina and figure things out." "Okay," she said. Then, after a pause, "Mommy, I'm glad you called the police. I was scared." "Me too, baby. Me too." Later that morning, while Sophie watched cartoons with Nina, I made the calls I'd been dreading. First, to my boss at the school, explaining that I needed some time off. She was immediately understanding, offering me 2 weeks of emergency leave and connecting me with a school counselor who specialized in domestic violence resources. Then, to a lawyer. Nina had given me the number of someone who did free consultations for domestic violence victims. His name was Robert Martinez, and his voice on the phone was kind but direct. "First thing Monday morning, we're filing for an emergency protection order. That'll legally prevent him from coming to your house or contacting you in any way. Then we'll start divorce proceedings. Given the circumstances, documented police report, photographic evidence of injuries, witness testimony from your daughter, you'll likely get primary custody with supervised visitation at most for him." Divorce. The word still felt surreal. 9 years of marriage, ending because my husband had grabbed my throat. Or maybe ending because I'd finally found the courage to say enough. "What if he doesn't comply with the protection order?" I asked. "Then he goes back to jail." "Mrs. Collins, I know this is scary, but you've already done the hardest part. You've left. Statistics show that leaving is when women in domestic violence situations are at most risk, but you've done it. You've gotten yourself and your daughter to safety. Now we make that safety legal and permanent." Legal and permanent. The words should have been comforting. Instead, they just made everything feel more real, more final. There was no going back now. Not that I wanted to, but still. The life I'd known, the marriage I'd tried so hard to save, the idea of the family I'd wanted Sophie to have, all of it was gone. All I had now was uncertainty, and the faint, terrifying hope that maybe uncertainty was better than living in fear. The arraignment happened Monday morning. Robert Martinez represented me at the protection order hearing right after. Ryan appeared via video from the jail, his face haggard, his eyes red. He didn't look at me once during the proceedings. The judge granted a temporary protection order immediately, citing the police report and photographic evidence. Ryan was ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from me, Sophie, the house, and my workplace. He was also ordered into an anger management program and substance abuse treatment. Do you understand these conditions, Mr. Collins? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor, Ryan said, his voice barely audible through the video connection. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest and additional charges. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. And just like that, my husband became someone I was legally protected from, someone dangerous enough that the court had to order him to stay away from his own family. Coming back to the house with Nina was surreal. The police had secured it after Friday night, but walking through the door felt like entering a crime scene, which technically it was. The living room still showed signs of Ryan's rage. I'd have to replace the lamp, repair the wall, replace the coffee table. But more than the physical damage, there was an atmosphere, a feeling of violence that lingered in the air. You don't have to stay here, Nina said, surveying the damage. You and Sophie can stay with me as long as you need to. I can't run from my own house, I said. This is our home. His violence doesn't get to take that from us too. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was true. Could this place ever feel like home again? Or would Sophie always remember what happened here? Would she always associate this house with fear? Over the next few weeks, I learned what domestic violence recovery actually looks like. It's not clean or linear. It's messy and complicated and full of contradictory emotions. I was angry at Ryan for what he'd done, but I also missed him, or missed who he used to be, or missed the idea of the marriage I thought we had. It was hard to know which. I felt guilty for breaking up Sophie's family, but I also felt relieved that she wouldn't grow up watching her father hurt her mother. Both feelings existed simultaneously, neither one canceling out the other. I felt strong for leaving, but I also felt weak for staying as long as I had. I felt proud and ashamed in equal measure. The domestic violence counselor I started seeing, Sandra, told me this was all normal. You're grieving, she explained during one of our sessions. Not just the end of your marriage, but the loss of the future you'd imagined, the life you thought you'd have. That grief is real and valid, even though leaving was absolutely the right choice. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted, if I should have given him another chance, if I should have tried harder to make it work. Sandra leaned forward, her expression serious. Lauren, he grabbed your throat while your daughter was in the house. That wasn't a one-time mistake. That was the culmination of years of escalating violence. If you'd stayed, it would have gotten worse. It always gets worse. How do you know? Because that's what the research tells us. Because I've worked with hundreds of women in your situation. Because I was in your situation once, 20 years ago. She paused. I stayed longer than I should have. And one day, my ex-husband put me in the hospital. That's when I finally left. Don't wait for your hospital moment, Lauren. You've already done the brave thing. Sophie started therapy too, with a child psychologist named Dr. Chen, who specialized in trauma. At first, I worried about what this would do to her, how the therapy and the court proceedings and the whole situation would affect her. But Dr. Chen assured me that children were resilient. The trauma isn't from you leaving, she explained. The trauma was from living in that environment. What you're doing now, getting help, being honest about what happened, showing her that adults can make brave choices, that's what will help her heal. In Sophie's second therapy session, Dr. Chen had her draw pictures of safe places and scared places. I wasn't in the room, but afterward, Dr. Chen showed me the drawings with Sophie's permission. The scared place was our house. She'd drawn it in dark colors, black, brown, gray, with all the windows covered and a figure that was clearly me standing by a door. The safe place was Aunt Nina's apartment, drawn in bright colors with sunshine and flowers, and both Nina and me smiling. Notice how she didn't draw Ryan in either picture, Dr. Chen pointed out. That's significant. She's already starting to process a future without him. That's healthy. But looking at those pictures broke my heart. My daughter's scared place was her own house, the place I tried so hard to make safe for her. And I failed. You didn't fail, Sandra told me when I brought it up in my next session. You were also a victim. You were also afraid. You did the best you could with the resources and knowledge you had at the time. And when you realized it wasn't enough, you changed the situation. That's not failure. That's strength. I wanted to believe her. Some days I did. Some days I didn't. But every day I kept moving forward. Because what other choice was there? Going back wasn't an option. Standing still meant staying stuck. The only way out was through. 6 weeks after I'd called 911, I had a visitor I wasn't expecting. Ryan's mother. I hadn't seen her since everything happened. She'd called a few times, leaving voicemails I'd never returned. What was I supposed to say? Your son grabbed my throat? Your son terrorized his family? Those weren't conversations I was equipped to have. But now she was standing on my porch, looking older than I remembered, her face lined with worry and something that might have been shame. Lauren, please, just give me 5 minutes. I should have closed the door, should have cited the protection order, which technically didn't prevent her from contacting me, just Ryan, should have protected my peace. But she looked so broken standing there. And despite everything, I'd loved this woman once. She'd welcomed me into her family, been there when Sophie was born, been kind to me even when Ryan wasn't. 5 minutes, I said, stepping outside and closing the door behind me. Sophie was at Nina's for the afternoon, but still, this conversation wasn't happening in my house. We sat on the porch steps, an awkward distance between us. I didn't know, she said immediately. I swear to you, Lauren, I didn't know it was this bad. If I'd known... You would have what? I asked, not unkindly. He's your son. What could you have done? I could have gotten him help before it got to this point. He's 35 years old. He chose to drink. He chose to be violent. You couldn't have stopped that. She was quiet for a moment. Then, his father used to hit me. The words hung in the air between us. I'd never known that. Ryan had never mentioned it. His father had always seemed like a quiet, gentle man before he died 5 years ago. When Ryan was young, before he started school, it was never as bad as what Ryan did to you, but it was there, the anger, the drinking, the grabbing and shoving. I thought I hid it from Ryan, but children see everything, don't they? Yes, I said softly, they do. I finally left when Ryan was 7, made his father go to treatment, made him change or lose us. And he did change. He really did. He quit drinking, got therapy, became the man I thought I married. But I always wondered if Ryan remembered those early years, if it affected him. That doesn't excuse what he did. No, it doesn't. Nothing excuses it. But it explains it, maybe. He learned that pattern, and when things got stressful, when he started drinking, the pattern came back. She turned to look at me, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry he hurt you. I'm sorry Sophie had to see that. I'm sorry I didn't realize what was happening and step in somehow. You couldn't have known if I didn't tell anyone. I hid it, I made excuses, I pretended everything was fine. Why? The question was simple, but the answer was so complex. Because I loved him. Because I kept thinking he'd go back to being the man I married. Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want to admit my marriage was failing. Because I thought I could fix it. Because leaving felt scarier than staying. I paused. A million reasons that all seem stupid now. They're not stupid. They're human. She reached out like she wanted to take my hand, then thought better of it. What's going to happen now with Ryan? He's in a treatment program, court ordered. If he completes it and stays sober and goes to his anger management classes, he might be able to have supervised visitation with Sophie. Might. That's up to a judge, and a lot depends on what Sophie wants. And you? Will you divorce him? Yes, the papers are already filed. She nodded, accepting this. Can I still see Sophie? I know I'm Ryan's mother, but she's my granddaughter. I love her. This was harder to answer, because I did believe she loved Sophie, but she was also Ryan's mother. Where did her loyalties lie? Let me think about it. Let me talk to Sophie's therapist. If everyone thinks it's okay, then maybe. But it has to be what's best for Sophie, not what's comfortable for adults. That's fair. That's more than fair. She stood to leave, then turned back. Lauren, thank you for saving him. What? By leaving, by calling the police, by forcing him to face consequences. If you'd stayed, if you'd kept enabling him, he would have killed you eventually, or killed himself. This way, he has a chance to get better, to become the man he should have been all along. Her voice broke. Thank you for being brave enough to leave. I know how hard that is. I know what it costs. After she left, I sat on the porch for a long time, thinking about patterns, about how violence gets passed down through generations like a poisonous inheritance, about how Ryan's father was violent until he wasn't, about whether people really could change, or if they just learned to hide their true nature better. But mostly, I thought about Sophie, about breaking the pattern, about making sure she never learned that love looks like fear, that marriage means walking on eggshells, that someone who hurts you deserves another chance. The pattern ended here, with me, with this choice, no matter how hard it was. 3 months after I called 911, I stood in Sophie's school gymnasium watching her Christmas pageant. She was playing a reindeer, one of 8, all wearing brown shirts and construction paper antlers, all absolutely adorable. Nina sat beside me, and Julie from work was on my other side, my support system, the people who'd shown up when I needed them most. Sophie spotted me in the crowd and waved, her whole face lighting up. The fear that had been in her eyes for so long was finally starting to fade. She was still in therapy, still processing everything, but she was laughing again, playing again, being a kid again. That was worth everything. After the pageant, as Sophie ran up to show me her antlers, Grace, her teacher, pulled me aside. I wanted you to know, she said quietly. Sophie told me what happened at home, why you're staying with your sister, why your father isn't coming to school events anymore. My stomach clenched. I'm sorry, I should have told you. No, Nina interrupted. You don't need to apologize. I'm telling you because I want you to know that Sophie is doing remarkably well. Whatever you're doing, the therapy, the stability, the honesty, it's working. She's resilient, and that's because you're giving her the tools to be resilient. I just want her to be okay, I said, my voice thick with emotion. She will be, because she has you. That night, back at Nina's apartment, which had become our home for now, Sophie and I made hot chocolate and sat on the couch looking at her drawings from school. Mommy, she said, her voice careful, can I ask you something? Always, baby. Is Daddy going to get better? The question was more complex than she knew. Better from what? The drinking? The anger? The violence? And how did you explain addiction and abuse to a 7-year-old? I hope so, I said honestly. He's in a program that's supposed to help him, but getting better is something he has to choose to do, Nobody can force someone to change. They have to want it. Do you think he wants it? I don't know. I hope so, for his sake. Not for our sake? No, baby. What happens with Daddy, whether he gets better or not, that's not about us anymore. We're going to be okay either way. We're going to build a good life, just you and me and Aunt Nina and everyone who loves us. We don't need Daddy to get better for us to be happy. She thought about this, her small face serious. I miss him sometimes. Is that bad? No, sweetheart, that's not bad at all. He's your daddy. It's okay to miss him. It's okay to love him. Those feelings can exist at the same time as knowing that what he did was wrong and that we're safer without him right now. That's confusing. I know. Grown-up feelings are confusing. Kid feelings too, probably. Do you miss him? I thought about lying, about giving her the simple answer, but I'd promised myself honesty. Sometimes I miss who he used to be. I miss the man I married before the drinking and the anger. But that man, I don't think he exists anymore. Or maybe he never really existed. Maybe I just saw what I wanted to see. I'm glad you called the police, Sophie said quietly. Even though it was scary, I'm glad you did it. Me too, baby. Me too. The divorce was finalized in February, 3 days before Valentine's Day. Robert Martinez had fought hard for me, and in the end, I got primary custody, the house, and a fair division of assets. Ryan got supervised visitation rights that he could petition to change after completing his treatment program and maintaining sobriety for 6 months. He sent me a letter after the divorce was final. The court had to approve it first, making sure it didn't violate the protection order. It said, "Lauren, I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know I can't undo what I did, but I need you to know that I'm trying to get better. Really trying. Not because the court ordered it, not because I want you back. I know that's not going to happen, and I understand why. But because I need to understand how I became someone who could hurt the people I loved most. My counselor says I learned these patterns from my childhood. That doesn't excuse anything, but it explains some things. I'm working through all of that now, learning how to handle anger without alcohol, learning that my feelings aren't anyone else's responsibility, learning to be the man I should have been all along. Tell Sophie I love her. Tell her Daddy is sick, but he's getting help. Tell her none of this was her fault. Tell her I hope someday I can be the father she deserves. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her you're the bravest person I've ever known. Ryan. I read the letter once, then put it in a file with all the other divorce documents. Maybe someday I'd show it to Sophie. Maybe someday it would matter that he'd acknowledged what he did, that he was trying to change. But for now, we were focused on moving forward, on healing, on rebuilding. By March, Sophie and I moved back into our house. Nina had helped me redecorate. New paint, new furniture, new everything, making it ours instead of ours and his. The first night back, Sophie stood in the middle of her room looking around at all the changes. "It feels different," I said. "Good different or bad different?" She thought about it. "Just different, but I think maybe good. We can make it good," I promised, together. That night, I didn't lock our bedroom doors. We didn't need to anymore. Spring brought new beginnings. I started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter on weekends, helping other women who were where I'd been months ago, scared, uncertain, wondering if they were overreacting or if leaving would make things worse. "You're not overreacting," I'd tell them, sitting across from women with bruises they tried to hide, with stories that sounded exactly like mine. "Your fear is telling you something true. Listen to it." Some of them left their situations. Some went back. I couldn't control their choices, but I could be there to support them either way. No judgment, just understanding from someone who'd walked that path. Sophie's therapy was going well. Dr. Chen said she was processing the trauma in healthy ways, that she wasn't internalizing guilt or blame, that she understood, as much as a 7-year-old could, that her father's behavior wasn't her fault or her mother's fault. "She's one of the most emotionally aware children I've worked with," Dr. Chen told me. "She's learning vocabulary for her feelings that most adults don't have. She's learning that it's okay to be sad and angry and confused all at once. Those are gifts you're giving her by being so honest with her." In April, Ryan completed his 90-day treatment program. His counselor reached out to Robert Martinez to report his progress, saying Ryan was engaging well with therapy, attending all his AA meetings, working through his anger management program. "He's requesting supervised visitation," Robert told me over the phone. "You have every right to say no, but the court will likely grant it given his compliance with treatment." "What does Sophie want?" I asked. "That's the right question. Let's ask her." So we did. Dr. Chen facilitated the conversation in a therapy session I attended. "How would you feel about seeing your daddy?" Dr. Chen asked Sophie gently. "In a safe place, with other adults there to make sure everyone's okay." Sophie was quiet for a long moment, her small hands folded in her lap. Finally, "Would Mommy be there?" "If you want me there, I'll be there," I said. "Would Daddy be mad?" "No, sweetie, your daddy isn't allowed to be mad or mean during these visits. If he is, the visit ends immediately and you don't have to see him again." "What if I don't like it? What if I want to leave?" "Then we leave," I said firmly. "You're in control here, Sophie. You don't have to see your daddy if you don't want to. But if you want to try, we can try. And if it doesn't feel good, we stop." "Okay," she said finally. "I want to try. But just once, to see if he's different." The supervised visitation happened at a family resource center with a trained monitor in the room. I stayed in the waiting area, close enough that Sophie knew I was there, but far enough to give Ryan and Sophie space. I'd told myself I'd be fine, that seeing Ryan again wouldn't affect me, but when he walked into the building, I felt my body respond the way it always had, the tightening in my chest, the quickening of my pulse, the instinct to make myself smaller. But this time, I recognized it for what it was, trauma response, not reality. Ryan couldn't hurt me here. The monitor wouldn't let him. The law wouldn't let him. And more importantly, I wouldn't let him. I watched through the window as Sophie entered the visitation room. Ryan dropped to his knees when he saw her, his face crumpling with emotion. They talked. I couldn't hear what they were saying. And after a few minutes, Sophie cautiously hugged him. The hour passed. When it was over, Sophie came out looking thoughtful, but not upset. "How was it?" I asked, kneeling down to her level. "He cried a lot," she said. "He said he was sorry. He said he's been sick, but he's getting better." "How did that make you feel?" "Sad, but also, I don't know. He seemed different, quieter. He wasn't scary." "Do you want to see him again?" She thought about it. "Maybe, but not for a while. I need to think about it." "That's perfect, baby. You can take all the time you need." That night, after Sophie was asleep, I did something I'd been avoiding. I looked at old photos. Pictures from our wedding, from Sophie's birth, from family vacations and holidays and ordinary moments that had seemed perfect at the time. In every photo, I was smiling. Ryan was smiling. We looked happy. But looking at them now, I could see what I'd missed at the time. The way I angled my body slightly away from him. The way my smile didn't quite reach my eyes in later photos. The way Sophie, as she got older, started positioning herself between us like a buffer. The signs had been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see them. I closed the album and put it away. Not throwing it out. Sophie might want these memories someday, and I wouldn't erase her history. But I didn't need to look at them anymore. Didn't need to mourn what I'd lost because I'd never really had it in the first place. What I had now was better. Harder, but better. Real instead of pretend. Safe instead of scary. honest instead of hidden. I had my daughter, healthy and healing. I had my sister, my friends, my support system. I had work that mattered, helping other women find their way out of the darkness. I had myself, stronger than I'd ever imagined I could be. And that was enough. More than enough. It was a Tuesday night in late May, almost exactly 9 months after I'd called 911, when everything came full circle. Sophie came home from school excited about something, bouncing on her toes the way she did when she had news to share. "Mommy, Miss Grace said we're doing another lockdown drill tomorrow, but this time it's different. This time we're learning about helping people who might be in danger." I set down the vegetables I'd been chopping for dinner. "What do you mean, helping people?" "Miss Grace said sometimes bad things don't just happen at school. Sometimes they happen at home or other places where people are supposed to be safe. And if we know someone who seems scared all the time, or who has bruises, or who acts different, we can tell a trusted adult so they can help." My heart clenched. "What else did Miss Grace say?" "She said that being scared in your own home isn't normal, that everyone deserves to feel safe where they live, that if someone in your family hurts you or scares you, it's okay to tell someone." Sophie paused, her expression thoughtful. She said, "Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help." "Miss Grace is right," I said softly. "I told her about us, Mommy, about Daddy and what happened. I hope that's okay." "Of course it's okay. What did she say?" "She said she was proud of you for being brave. She said you probably saved both of our lives by calling the police that night." Sophie looked up at me, her eyes serious beyond her years. She said, "Lots of kids live in houses where they're scared, but most grown-ups don't tell anyone." She said you were really brave to tell someone and ask for help. I knelt down so I was at her level. "You know what? You were brave too. You locked your door like I told you. You stayed safe. You've been so strong through all of this, going to therapy, talking about your feelings, understanding that none of this was your fault. I'm so proud of you, Sophie." "I learned from you, Mommy. You showed me how to be brave." That night, after Sophie was in bed, I got a text from Grace. "I hope it's okay that we talked about domestic violence in class today. After everything with Sophie, I realized how many kids might be living in situations like yours. I wanted them to know they could tell someone, that there's help available. Was that okay?" I typed back, "More than okay. Thank you for doing that. You might have just saved someone's life." She responded, "You saved your own life and Sophie's. You're the hero in this story." But I didn't feel like a hero. Heroes were people who did extraordinary things. I just done what I had to do to survive, to protect my child. That wasn't heroic. That was just necessary. Or maybe that was exactly what heroism was. Not grand gestures or dramatic rescues, just ordinary people making the hardest choices, just mothers protecting their children, just women deciding enough was enough. I thought back to that September afternoon 9 months ago. Sophie coming home from her first lockdown drill, me standing at the stove stirring pasta sauce, suddenly seeing my life with terrifying clarity. That moment had changed everything. Not because of what Sophie said, but because of what I recognized in myself. The same survival skills she was learning for hypothetical danger, I'd been practicing for real danger. The same techniques for staying quiet, staying hidden, reading warning signs. We were both learning to survive in environments that should have been safe. And that recognition gave me the clarity I needed to finally act. I'd saved Sophie's life by leaving, but I'd saved my own life too. Not just from physical danger, though Ryan's violence had been escalating and who knows where it would have ended, but from a life lived in perpetual fear, from teaching my daughter that this was normal, from becoming like my mother, spending decades in a bad situation before finally finding the courage to leave. The pattern ended with me. Sophie would grow up knowing that love doesn't look like fear, that marriage doesn't mean tolerating abuse, that when someone hurts you, you don't stay and hope they change, you leave and save yourself. She'd grow up knowing that asking for help isn't weak, that calling the police on someone you love when they're dangerous isn't betrayal, that protecting yourself and your child is always the right choice, even when it's the hardest choice. Those were gifts I could give her, lessons I'd learned too late, but just in time. I pulled out my laptop and started writing, not for publication, not for anyone else, just for me, just to process everything I'd been through, everything I learned. The year my daughter learned lockdown drills, so did I. She learned them at school, preparing for a danger that might never come. I learned them at home, surviving a danger that was already there. But here's what we both learned in the end. You don't have to stay quiet. You don't have to hide. You don't have to wait for someone else to save you. Sometimes the lockdown drill is practice for escaping, not for enduring. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is run towards safety instead of away from danger. Sometimes asking for help is the strongest thing you'll ever do. I saved the document, closed my laptop, looked around at the home Sophie and I had rebuilt together, safe now, truly safe. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. It's been 2 years since that September night when Sophie came home talking about lockdown drills and everything clicked into place. 2 years since I called 911 and changed our lives forever. Sophie is 9 now, thriving in 3rd grade, playing soccer and taking art classes and being a normal kid in all the best ways. She sees Ryan once a month for supervised visitation. He's maintained his sobriety, continued his therapy, shown genuine remorse and growth. The visits are cordial, sometimes even pleasant. He's learning to be a better father, even if he'll never be my husband again. And that's okay. We're all healing in our own ways. I'm still working at the school, still volunteering at the domestic violence shelter. I've become a certified advocate now, trained to help women navigate the legal system, find resources, create safety plans. Every woman I help feels like I'm saving a younger version of myself, like I'm going back in time and giving that scared, confused Lauren the help she needed. Last week, a woman came into the shelter with her 5-year-old daughter. She had bruises on her arms, fear in her eyes, and a story that sounded exactly like mine. "I don't know if I'm overreacting," she said, the same words I'd said so many times. "Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I should try harder to make it work." I sat with her, held her hand, and told her what I wish someone had told me years earlier. You're not overreacting. Your fear is real. What's happening to you isn't your fault, and you deserve better. Your daughter deserves better. There's help available. You don't have to do this alone. She cried. Then she made a safety plan. Then she left her husband and started the hard work of rebuilding her life. Not everyone makes that choice. Some women return to their abusers multiple times before they finally leave for good. Some never leave. I've learned not to judge those choices because I understand how complicated it is, how many factors go into staying or leaving, how fear and love and hope and trauma all tangle together until you can't tell them apart. But for the ones who do leave, I'm there to help them through it, to show them that life after abuse is possible, that healing is possible, that you can rebuild yourself into someone stronger than you were before. Nina tells me I should write a book, tell my story so other women know they're not alone. Maybe someday I will. For now, I'm focused on the work and on Sophie. She started asking questions about relationships lately, about what makes a good partner, about how you know if someone really loves you. Love means respect, I tell her. It means someone caring about your feelings as much as their own. It means feeling safe, physically and emotionally. It means being able to be yourself without fear. Like you and Aunt Nina, she says. "You're always nice to each other." Exactly like that. People who love each other should be kind to each other even when they disagree about things. Did Daddy love you? It's a hard question, one I've thought about a lot over the past 2 years. I think Daddy loved me as much as he was capable of loving anyone, I say carefully, but he was sick with addiction and anger and patterns he learned when he was young, and sometimes being sick makes it hard to love people the right way. That doesn't mean his feelings weren't real, it just means they weren't healthy. Do you think he loves me? I know he does, sweetheart. The way he is now, going to therapy, staying sober, being respectful during visits, that's love. That's him learning to be a better father because he loves you. It's just not the kind of love where we can all live together as a family. She nods, accepting this. She's learned to hold complicated truths. She's learned that you can love someone and still need to be apart from them, that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, that healing doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. These are hard lessons for a 9-year-old, but they're also gifts. She won't spend her 20s and 30s learning what I had to learn. She won't tolerate abuse because she doesn't know any better. She won't stay quiet when she should speak up. The pattern really has ended with me. Tonight, as I tuck her into bed, she asks one more question. "Mommy, do you think you'll ever get married again?" "Maybe someday," I say honestly, "but only to someone who treats me with respect and kindness, only to someone who makes me feel safe, only to someone I can trust." "Someone who doesn't scare you?" "Exactly. Someone who doesn't scare me." "Good," she says, snuggling into her pillows. After she's asleep, I sit on our front porch, the same porch where I sat with Ryan's mother 2 years ago, and think about how far we've come. I think about that night in September when Sophie demonstrated her lockdown drill, her finger to her lips, teaching me what I'd been teaching her without realizing it. I think about the moment I recognized my own survival patterns reflected back to me through my 7-year-old daughter. I think about the choice I made to call 911, to ask for help, to save us both. And I think about all the women who are where I was, living in fear, making excuses, wondering if it's really that bad. To those women, I want to say this. It is that bad. Your fear is real. You're not overreacting. You deserve better. And the bravest thing you can do for yourself and for your children is ask for help. The danger isn't out there. Sometimes it's already inside your house. And the only way to survive is to run towards safety, not hide from danger. I called 911 2 years ago, and it saved our lives. What will you do to save yours? Before I let you go, I need you to know something. This story, Sophie's story, my story, it's not unique. Right now, someone listening to this is living in a situation like mine. Someone is making excuses for bruises. Someone is teaching their children to walk on eggshells without meaning to. Someone is wondering if it's really that bad. If that's you, please hear me. It is that bad, and there is help available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. They're available 24/7. You're not alone. If you found this story meaningful, if it resonated with you or might help someone you know, please share it. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what spoke to you in this story. Your engagement helps these stories reach the people who need them most. And if you want to share your own story, whether it's about surviving domestic violence, finding courage, protecting your children, or any other struggle you've overcome, I want to hear it. This community is built on supporting each other, on sharing our truths, on reminding each other that we're not alone in our battles. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of this community. Stay safe, stay strong, and remember, asking for help isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing you'll ever do.